In the last episode, we lift off with a mystery, a 5,000-year-old civilization that's completely silent. The Indus Valley people built megacities, engineered plumbing that worked better than some plumbing today, and left behind thousands of these beautiful little seals, all covered in a language that no one on Earth can read. And it's not for lack of trying. We have over 2,000 short inscriptions with more than 500 unique signs, and we know it was written from right to left, but no one, not the Russian teams, not the Finnish teams, no one has cracked it. So, where did India's voice come from? What if I told you the story of India's language isn't one story, but a collision, a head-on crash between two completely different language families? One is ancient, deeply indigenous to India, and just might be the secret of those silent Indus people. The other arrived in a wave of migration and was later engineered by a singular genius to be so perfect, so perfectly precise, that it became the language of the gods. This is the story of a linguistic fusion that defined a subcontinent. It's the story of Sanskrit, and it all starts with a peacock. Stick around. Okay, so the Indus script is a mystery we still haven't solved. The languages that 1.4 billion people speak in India today, they don't come from that script. Instead, they come from two totally separate, unrelated families. Think of it like a linguistic North versus South. In the North, you have the Indo-Aryan languages, a massive family of over 200 languages spoken by 1.5 billion people. Like Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, Gujarati. They all descend from one powerful ancestor, Sanskrit. In the south, you have the Dravidian languages, a completely separate family with its own subgroups like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam. And when I say unrelated, I mean it. They are as different from each other as English is from, say, Japanese. They have different grammar, different sounds, different everything. So, the big question is, how did they both end up in India? Which one was here first? Well, here's the twist. Remember our silent friends, the Indus Valley Civilization? The leading theory, the one we hinted at last time, is that they did speak one of these. They probably spoke an early form of Dravidian. You're thinking, wait, the Indus was in the north, Dravidian is in the south. How does that make sense? Because we found a survivor way up in Pakistan, in the same rough neighborhood as the ancient Indus cities, surrounded by a sea of Indo-Aryan speakers. There is a small, isolated pocket of people called the Brahui. And what language do they speak? Dravidian. This is a linguistic fossil. It's a clue that Dravidian was once spoken all across the subcontinent. In fact, Proto-Dravidian vocabulary suggests it's deeply indigenous to India. It was here until something new arrived: Sanskrit. Around 1500 BCE, tribes of Indo-Aryan speakers began migrating into the northern subcontinent, the same area where the Indus Valley had been. They brought their language with them, an early spoken form we call Vedic Sanskrit. Now, you'd expect a story of conquest, right? One language wipe out the other. But that is not what happened. The real story is so much weirder and so much cooler. And we know what happened because the new arrivals did something amazing. They composed the oldest text in India, the Rigveda. And that ancient book holds the smoking gun. This is the exact kind of deep dive mystery we built this channel to solve. We're not about simple answers, we're about the real story. If you're into that, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's free and it lets us keep digging. Okay, so what's the smoking gun? So, the Rigveda is the foundational text, the oldest book of the Indo-Aryan speakers. It's a massive collection of over 1,000 hymns composed around 1500 BCE. It's their book in their language, but it's not. When linguists cracked it open, they found something that changed everything. The Rigveda, the oldest Sanskrit text, is already full of Dravidian words. Yeah, words the newcomers just borrowed. What kind of words? Words for all the new stuff they were seeing in India. Words for local plants, animals, and tools. My favorite example is the word for peacock, Mayura. That's a Dravidian word. Words like chala, meaning threshing floor, uluchala, mortar, kunda, pet, even kana, one-eyed, all borrowed from the local Dravidian speakers. This is the smoking gun. It proves that this wasn't a simple conquest. It was a fusion. The two groups, Aryan and Dravidian, were living together, mixing, and fused into one speech community right from the very beginning. In fact, the Dravidian influence is so profound, it changed the very sound of Sanskrit. Sanskrit adopted the retroflex consonants, those T and D sounds you make with the tip of your tongue curled back. Those sounds, they came from Dravidian. So this early, vibrant spoken language, Vedic Sanskrit, was born from a mix. It was the language of the Vedas, epic hymns to the gods, detailed instructions for complex rituals, chanted and memorized exactly for 1,000 years. It was a powerful language, but it was also kind of wild. It was a living, spoken, evolving thing. So much so that by the time of the Buddha, around 500 BCE, the archaic Vedic Sanskrit of the Rigveda was already becoming unintelligible to most people. But what happens when your language, the one you use to talk to the gods, needs to be perfect? What happens when you want to use it for complex philosophy, for law, for science, and it's changing too fast? Well, around the 6th or 5th century BCE, a genius comes along, a man named Panini. Panini was a grammarian, and he did something nobody had ever done before. He sat down and engineered the language. He wrote a book called the Ashtadhyayi, the 8 chapters, and in it he codified all of Sanskrit. He laid out thousands of rules that define the entire language. It is, to this day, considered one of the finest, most elegant grammars ever produced. He didn't just describe Sanskrit, he perfected it. This new, refined, purified language is what we call classical Sanskrit. And this language, this perfect, precise, almost mathematical tool, becomes the link language for the entire elite world. For the next 1,000 years, from 300 to 1300 CE, if you were a king, a poet, or a scientist, you used Sanskrit. It spread across all of South and Southeast Asia, creating what scholars call the Sanskritopolis. It was the language of high culture. So, what do you do with a perfect language? First, you tell the greatest stories in the world. This is where the great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, come from. They are smriti texts, meaning that which is remembered. They didn't start as books. They started as oral stories, told and retold, growing over centuries. The Mahabharata, attributed to the sage Vyasa, started as the Jaya Gita, a song of victory with just 880 verses. Then it grew into the Ballada, with 24,000 verses named after the Bharata tribe, one of the original Vedic tribes. Remember that name? We're gonna need it in part 6. It kept growing until it became the Mahabharata, the Great Ballada, a monster of 100,000 verses. It's the longest poem ever written, period. The Ramayana, attributed to Valmiki, did the same thing, starting with 6,000 verses and growing to 24,000, with later versions cementing the hero Rama as an incarnation of the god Vishnu. These epics became the shared hard drive of the entire culture. So you tell epic stories. What else? You invent a new way of thinking. See, the original Vedas, they were all about rituals, external sacrifices, ceremonies, what you do to appease the gods. But then, around 800 BCE, a new set of texts gets added to the end of the Vedas. They're called the Upanishads. They are the philosophical appendices. And the Upanishads do something revolutionary. They internalize the rituals. A group of ascetics and sages seeking answers beyond just ceremonies stopped asking, "What should we do?" and started asking, "What is real?" The Upanishads are the birth of Indian philosophy. They're all about Atman, the self, the individual soul, and Brahman, the ultimate, single, unifying reality of the entire cosmos. This massive leap in human thought, from external ritual to internal philosophy, it all happens in Sanskrit. So, Sanskrit isn't just a language. It's a liturgical language, a sacred tool. It was preserved and perfected because people believed the exact phonetic sound of the mantras was crucial. It wasn't just what you said, but how you said it. This ancient, perfect, sacred language, it's not dead. In fact, if you've ever been to a yoga class, you already know some of it. You know one word in particular. Namaste. We all think it just means hello or goodbye. It doesn't. It's a pure Sanskrit word, namah, which means to bow or obeisance, and te, which means to you. I bow to you. And this isn't some New Age invention. The phrase Namaste appears in the Rigveda itself as a gesture of reverence and homage. But that's just the literal meaning. The real meaning, the Upanishadic meaning, the one that contains this entire 2,000-year-old journey of philosophy, it means the divine in me bows to the divine in you. That one word, it contains the entire story. It has the ancient, sacred roots of the Vedas. It has the profound internal philosophy of the Upanishads. The idea that God isn't just in the sky, it's in you. And it's not the only one. The Upanishads also gave India one of its most important rules for all of society. You've probably heard it. Atithi Devo Bhava. Atithi, guest. Devo, God. Bhava, to be. The guest is God. But the original meaning of Atithi is even cooler. It meant one without a fixed time, an unexpected guest. The Taittiriya Upanishad says, "Be one for whom the mother is God, the father is God, the teacher is God, and be one for whom the guest is God." The language of India, it's not just a tool for communication, it's a tool for realization. So the land was formed by a geological crash, part 1, and the language was formed by a cultural crash, part 2. But what did these people, these Indus Valley farmers, these Vedic poets, what did they eat? Well, the story of Indian food is not what you think it is. It's not just about curry. It's a story of a revolutionary 5,000-year-old farming system. that grow both summer and winter crops, long before China or Egypt. It's a story of global trade, secret maps, and Arab merchants who told fantastic lies, like that cinnamon grew in deep glens infested with poisonous snakes, just to protect their monopoly. That is next time in Part 3, The Origin of the Food. What's the most mind-blowing thing you learned about Sanskrit? The Dravidian loanwords, Panini's perfect grammar, or the real meaning of Namaste? Let me know in the comments. And please like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm we're doing something right, and it means you won't miss Part 3.